Thank you. Alexander Marks for the record with the Nevada State Education Association. Nevada State Education Association continues to have serious policy concerns regarding the State Public Charter School Authority and asks for appropriate controls and accountability. Charter schools were initially promoted by educators who sought to innovate within the local public school system to better meet the needs of their students. But over the last 22 years, charter schools have grown dramatically to include large number of charters that are privately managed, largely unaccountable, and non-transparent as to their operations and performance. The explosive growth of charters has been driven in part by a deliberate, well-funded effort to ensure that charters are exempt from the basic safeguards and standards that apply to public schools. We've seen this in the lobbying efforts of the National Coalition for Public School Options, which has been reported to have connections to K-12 Inc., the largest online charter operator in the country. Too frequently, charters are operated expressly for profit or are nominally nonprofit but managed or operated by for-profit entities. These charters have devolved far from the original concept of charters as small incubators for innovation. Most importantly, the growth of charters has undermined local public schools and communities without producing any overall increase in student learning and growth. It is important to note most recent studies have shown that public schools outperform charter schools on average, and public schools educate every student, including English learners, students in poverty, and students with individualized education plans. While they are prohibited from discriminating, charters serve far fewer students with disabilities. Charter schools rarely are held to the same standards as traditional public schools, and adding insult to injury, we have now learned that the controls we thought governed Nevada's state public charter schools have not been followed. Site visits are a basic component of delivering oversight and accountability for any regulator. The State Public Charter School Authority went years without following the charter performance framework, including not conducting site visits until last month. We believe it's time for the legislature to assert strong controls of Nevada charter schools, including joining the 21 other states who have decided to cap charter school expansions. Meanwhile, the legislature needs to continue.
Marks, if you could finalize your
continue
sentence.
its good work on our traditional public schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, students.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 100 years. Earlier in this hearing, my colleague Alex Marks spoke eloquently about issues around controls or lack thereof, and accountability or lack thereof of the state's charter schools. Will associate myself with those comments. As for AB 78, we can talk about the original or the amendments. Either way, we consider these a half measure, in that these additional controls are not nearly enough to hold the State Public Charter School Authority or district sponsored charter schools accountable, which is why we are asking for AB 78 to be amended to include caps on charter school expansion, joining 21 other states in this country that do that. The National Conference of State Legislatures has issued a policy brief on caps. There's some, it's a little dated, but there's some interesting guidance in here. Ultimately, there's a menu of approaches that can be taken when instituting caps on charter school expansion. NSCA prefers a strong cap, limiting the total number of charter schools, as well as a cap on the total number of students enrolled in said charter schools. Now, the conceptual amendments to this legislation didn't appear in Nellis until at some point this morning. I saw them first time at lunch, so we have been unable to mobilize our members who have very strong feelings against the Assembly, not the Assembly, very strong feelings for the Assembly, but against the Achievement School District. We believe that the ASD has been a failed experiment, that it takes away, it does not add to public schools in our communities. It causes much consternation and grief. I will not get into Solarity. I believe I talked about them during the last session, but we believe that the Achievement School District is a model that should be left behind in its entirety. And I would just add another note that to me, policy making should be about good public policy and not about personnel decisions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right.